Welcome everyone. Today's webinar is about New Zealand and our trip there next year. I will first of all take a few minutes just to introduce Wheel and Anchor for those of you who are new. We are a travel community that I set up together with my trusted partner Joel and a small team of us about 5 years ago, after spending 30 years, more than 30 years, organizing travel for Canadians to all parts of the world. I very quickly, I shouldn't say very quickly, it took me 30 years or 25. I realized that when you get a group of like-minded people together, and when I say like-minded, I'm talking about the fact that we're primarily Canadian, and we just appreciate the culture, the soft touch approach to traveling in other countries, and being respectful, but at the same time inquisitive and engaging in a dialogue and asking the questions. And for me, you kind of get that sense when a group of people, sometimes on a lot of our trips, at least a few people know each other from a past trip or from events that we did in the past, but there's a gelling that happens sort of right off the bat, right at the first welcome dinner, and that just doesn't happen when you just join an ordinary tour group. And so that's the vibe that we bring to Wheel and Anchor. And I'm just sharing with you a couple of pictures from this year's trip to New Zealand. We had a live away program that we did here, which we modified into this new version of a more experiential type program through New Zealand. And they had a marvelous time. You can see the smiles and laughs on everybody's faces. This is the feeling of being on a Wheel and Anchor trip, and what really sets us apart, I think, from a lot of other tour companies who offer a great program. But for us, it's the people dynamic that is really a big part of the experience that we bring to our members, and that's kind of what we're all about. So let me introduce first of all our team today. So my name is Gordon. Again, I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, and as I say, I've been doing travel for over 30 years. I never stopped, for those of you that know me, I couldn't do this without my slowly growing team of people who are equally passionate about travel. Paula and Barb, who have not joined with me this evening. It's a little bit past office hours, so I let them have the evening off. So, and our special guest today, Vicki Annison, joining us from Auckland. Vicki, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Gordon, and hello to everybody, or I should say kia ora. Kia ora from New Zealand, where it is Kia ora, it is 1 p.m. on Wednesday here.
There you go. So it's a whole next day in New Zealand, as you can imagine. And Vicki, you are actually not a native-born Kiwi, so I have to sort of say that right off the bat.
You may, as I speak more, you may pick up that I am not actually a born New Zealander, but I'm very much, as I said to Gordon, an honorary Kiwi. I have been here for 15 years, and I have a passport to prove it as well now, with a New Zealand passport, which I very proudly am. My all black passport.
And your all black passport, and it's a testament to somebody that's found their way all the way to New Zealand from the UK, and then just loved it so much that you decided to stay. So
and I have the great job of being able to promote New Zealand to other people like me that don't live there. I've lived here for 15 years now, but I get to still promote New Zealand and all its wonderful locations you can visit, and the wonderful people here.
Amazing. So Vicki and I are going to take our members, on our usual digital journey, as we do in our webinars, through the amazing country of New Zealand. This terrific 22-day itinerary that Vicki and her team, together with my team, Elsa and I, have gradually created. It's taken us time to get here, but we're really excited about it. And as usual, I'll just sort of start up with a map. Everybody knows, I think, where New Zealand is, obviously, to the east of to the southeast of Australia. And of course, we're going to begin our journey, I should say, in Auckland, the capital on the North Island, where we will spend the first few nights. And of course, we invite members to go in early. We have started slow, as we usually do on our programs, but nevertheless, I know some people like to fly in a day or two early and really catch up on the jet lag. It is a long journey, let's face it. And so we're going to spend the first few days there. We're going to explore a little bit about the north part of the North Island. This is the historic capital, of the historic center of New Zealand, before going down overland to places like Cambridge and Rotorua. Rotorua, famous for its geothermal hot springs. And then we'll make a hop down by flight to the South Island, where we'll begin our trip that commences in Christchurch. And we'll go down the eastern side of the Southern Alps. Sorry, first of all, the western side of the Southern Alps, excuse me, along the west coast, or along the west side of the Alps, down to Queenstown, where we'll spend a few nights. This is the heart of adventure, above the mountains, spectacular scenery, before heading back up the east side of the Alps, up to Mount Cook, and then back to Christchurch, where our journey will end. And I will preface this as well by saying that we have fit our New Zealand trip in so that it follows immediately our live away in Bali, Indonesia. And I know a number of members this year went to Bali for a couple of weeks, and then they continued on and to New Zealand. And I'm also delighted to announce that our Australia program follows New Zealand. So if you're really looking to that sort of big trip of a lifetime and take it all in, and avoid having to go back and forth across the Pacific multiple times, you could theoretically spend the whole last half of winter in Bali, then continue to New Zealand, which is of course autumn, and then continue on into Australia, which takes you well into May, so that when you get back home to Canada, the weather should have turned normal. Anyway, we will begin in Auckland, which of course you can reach on direct flights from Vancouver, and there's a million other ways to get there. We won't get into that here. And yeah, Auckland, the city of sails. Tell us a little bit about Auckland and what our experience is going to be like as we spend a few days there.
Absolutely. So Auckland is one of our major cities, as someone I noticed pointed out on your chat. It's not our capital city, even though
of course,
yeah, by size it probably would warrant to be. We've got a population for New Zealand, a very large population of 1.7 million in Auckland, but it is not our capital city. So it's a wonderful, very vibrant, cosmopolitan city. However, you are situated very much by the water, and you have got two main harbours, so that such as the number of boats, I think, just referring to my notes, excuse me, we do claim to have the world's highest boat ownership per capita. So this is why it is the city of sails, based with those two major harbours. And at almost any point in Auckland, you've got views of the water.
Yeah, exactly. You can see here a great view of the city center with some of those sailboats and all the rest of it. So the day that we arrive in, as usual, we don't plan a lot. We try to let you get, caught up on from the jet lag, the long journey. And then we're going to set out to see some of the highlights. And what are some of the things that we will take in on our day in Auckland?
So one of the things we do see is pictured very centrally there. We've got Sky Tower. So I know you have towers also in Canada and elsewhere in the world, but Sky Tower, 328 meters. It's the tallest structure in New Zealand. And we do include an experience where you get to travel up the tower. We've got a high-speed elevator, thankfully. And there are glass panels in the floor at certain points, so you get that thrill if you wish. But otherwise, you've got from the panels all around panoramic views for about 80 kilometers in all directions. So on a clear day, spectacular views. Absolutely amazing.
Amazing. And I understand Auckland also retains has a very good connection to the Maori culture, which is very near and dear to New Zealand. I think this is one of the things that makes a visit here interesting, because the relationship between the colonists, as it were, and the Maori in New Zealand is very special and really fantastic if you compare to the challenges that we face at home in Canada and in as well as in the States.
Yeah, I think you'll find that evident throughout New Zealand. Our cultural capital, is Rotorua. So we can talk about that more when we're in that area. But also when we go up north, in a day or two after where we are now, again, we can feature that a little more.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So we'll talk about that in a second. I think one of the things is you can't visit Auckland. Well, there's many things to visit. I mean, you could spend weeks here, I think. But Waiheke Island, if I've said that, if I've pronounced that correctly, Waiheke is a spot not far from the city, and this is one of the wine regions: rolling hills, green countryside, all of that beautiful scenery that you can expect. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're a short 30 to 40-minute boat ride away from the city through those beautiful waters with all those boats that we've said to Waiheke Island, which is one of our, we have a lot of very good wine growing regions in New Zealand, but this is a very good one for particularly Bordeaux type wines. So we have a number, I couldn't even tell you how many wineries on this island. It is extremely popular for wineries. So we will, of course, include a wine tour because that's a compulsory.
It's a must. You can't, I mean, we're all familiar with New Zealand wines at home, and we're going to pass through a number of the different vineyard areas as we go on the trip. After spending a couple of days in Auckland, we head north. And as we were chatting the other day, this is really where the history of New Zealand was sort of born, I guess. Is that fair to say, up in Paihia, in this area?
Definitely. It is where we saw some of the first settlers. Paihia is in the region called the Bay of Islands, which was named by James Cook when he came through in 1769. It was just in the indigenous people then, but as more whalers came to the area and settlers in general, towns were established, including Russell, where we get to spend some time. And that was at one point, it was our capital city before we moved to Auckland and then Wellington. And it also had the nickname Hellhole of the South Pacific, because with whalers coming in and out and the bars, etc., didn't always have a good reputation.
the hellhole of the Pacific. I mean, what a moniker.
On since then.
Exactly. And so we're going to be staying in Paihia itself, which is just a short ferry ride away from Russell. And so we're going to be doing some touring around here, but we're also going to have a little bit of free time. Give us a sense of what the experience is like as we're looking around this area.
Yeah, so you do very much get both the cultural and historic is very atmospheric. You can soak in everything here. The history goes back to the 1840s when we signed the Waitangi Treaty. That was in February 1840, and it's a day that we still celebrate. It's a national holiday in New Zealand every day, the Waitangi Treaty Day. And we do take you to Waitangi Treaty House to learn more about the history of that. And you have time to explore Russell, this town we've got pictured here, which again has got amazing history. At about 5 years after they signed the treaty, there was a war kicked off and a lot of this town got burnt to the ground. But there's some buildings that remain from the original days, including the beautiful Duke of Marlborough pub, which is waterfront where I think you get to go for a lunch. And we have the church, which has still got gunshot holes in the wall from the war. It's a really amazing, interesting historic church, a little graveyard. But if you go, you must look for the holes in the wall.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's always interesting because when you see stuff like that, it's just you immediately sort of step back and think, what was it like at that time when all this stuff was going on? And the scenery was as beautiful as it was then, but I think that's not what they were looking at that time. While we're over here as well, we will do a little bit of touring, obviously, on the water.
Yes, you've got some optional excursions. This is one of them. So we offer a hole in the rock cruise, or there is a helicopter flight option as well. So some amazing things you can do to add on and to see this region in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and so as with any of our programs, we like to include the free time to make sure that you can really, as you say, soak it all in and do the things that you'd like to do. Some people, as you say, like to go up in the air and experience it by helicopter or a boat cruise through this amazing countryside. So a lot of different options while we have our 3 nights up in Paihia. Then from here, then we head back down, passing by Auckland on the way, and we head over to Cambridge. And the Hamilton Gardens, which I understand are one of the most beautiful gardens in the world.
Now, I'm going to take that claim as true. I stand by it. They are international award-winning gardens. And what's special about them is they actually have this collection of gardens. It's the story of civilization told through gardens. So they have an Italian garden, a Maori garden, and they actually have an Egyptian garden, which again, I'll just refer to my notes to make sure I'm telling you the truth. But their latest garden, the Egyptian garden, is a replica garden, and it's the only one of its type in the world. So that's very special. That's their latest garden to open. And it's one of many, a very wide collection. I couldn't list them all to you right now.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard only amazing things about it. I'm a garden fanatic myself, so I mean, you could just wander around this forever. So this will be what we enjoy. And although this is really just a stopover, we're just spending one night here in Cambridge, but this will be a real big highlight to see these amazing gardens. We then make our way down to Rotorua, stopping at Mata Mata, and yet another. I think you said this is like the most touristic site in New Zealand, and I caveat that by saying, I have the philosophy, if the tour buses are going this way, we go the other way. But this is one of those things you have to see. Why is that?
Well, you may or may not be a Hobbit or Lord of the Rings fan of the books or movies, but I would challenge anyone to go to Hobbiton and not be impressed, even if you'd never read a book or movie. The place is just amazing. This is not a Disneyland. This is a real life setting in the fields of the Waikato countryside. Peter Jackson, who was the director of the films, was flying over scouting for sites, and this place had exactly what he needed. The rolling green countrysides really represented the Shire, if you know the story. There was a lake, there was a big oak tree. So this is a true life movie set. It's not a Disney World. And there's a massive team of gardeners that work there. It is a full-time job. And there's a beautiful pub in there called the Green Dragon, where you can go and have one of the Hobbit brews. It's absolutely wonderful.
It'll be an amazing day. And as you say, this differentiates itself because it doesn't come across like a theme park. This is a real live movie set. And the way that they've done all the, like, it's absolutely magical. It's going to be a terrific place to visit. We'll be staying in Rotorua for 3 nights. And as you said before, this is the cultural capital of New Zealand. So give us a little bit of an insight of what we're going to see and do to sort of get up close and personal, if you will, with the Maori culture.
Sure. So we have included a great experience for you where you visit Te Puia, which has got the other thing that Rotorua is the cultural capital. It's also our geothermal capital center of New Zealand. So you're getting 2 massive experiences here, which combine at Te Puia. So there's a lot of Maori culture that you can learn about alongside geothermal areas, and our geysers are there. And you have got the Te Po night experience, which is a whole feast of storytelling and food as well. So it's one of the best places to learn about the culture of New Zealand and our Indigenous people. We've got some amazing other experiences in Rotorua as well. You get to see kiwi birds, and you get to go in a suspended bridges in our redwood tree walk forest. So one thing just to note, if someone hasn't been to Rotorua before, can take you a little by surprise, is the sulfurous smell. So it's sometimes called the sulfur city. You have got a little bit of a tinge of a rotten egg smell at times, but that's because of all the geothermal activity. So just bear in mind when the coach arrives there and opens the door, you might just get a whiff of that. Yeah. But if you're prepared,
and if you're not used to it at first, it's sulfur, so it's quite a pungent smell. And we have hot springs in Canada, west and so on, that have the same sort of thing. But nevertheless, if you're not accustomed to it, it does catch you a little bit by surprise. But like anything, you get used to it quickly. So, and as you say, so we take the time to have a full day here because. I think one of the things that you might just want to do is really experience the hot springs and all the hot pools. And I understand there's a lake spa there that allows you to really enjoy the thermal water. So this is an optional that you can do. There's many different ways you can experience this geothermal center of New Zealand, or you can, of course, take the day and spend more time learning about the Maori culture. So there's a lot of different options in Rotorua, and either way, you know, you'll really gain a lot of what New Zealand is all about, because this is just one of those hotspots, if I sort of use the pun. So out of Rotorua, we are then going to fly down to the South Island, and our first stop will be Christchurch, and Christchurch, you know, became I should say it was put on the map, sadly, I think, by the earthquakes that happened about 12 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Christchurch, because we're going to be spending a few nights here at this part of the South Island, as well as at the very end of our journey before we fly home.
Okay, so yes, Christchurch is the second largest city in New Zealand, and it is actually our oldest city. So the city, of course, is named a city because it has a cathedral, which you can see here. This is Christchurch's old cathedral, which unfortunately was damaged in the 2011 quakes. So this is the picture from before. If you were to view it now, you can still see the majority of this is still standing, but there are hoardings around it while they make sure it's structurally safe, and they are getting it ready to reopen at some point in the future. So it's a really key point in the city centre. It is a very English city. We've got the beautiful River Avon that goes through it. So again, English river, and you get to go punting on the River Avon. There we go, beautiful picture. You can sit back and relax. You have a boatman that will punt you along the river, which goes right through the city. So it's a great way to sit back, relax, and enjoy the surrounds and soak that
enjoy
all
the surrounds while somebody else is paddling, or as you
doing
say,
the hard work. And they're
doing the
amazing,
hard
the
work.
boatmen. They dress up in striped jackets and the little boat hats as well, the wicker hats. So very in keeping with an English river, whilst in the middle of New Zealand.
So it'll be a lovely experience. We'll spend 3 nights in Christchurch, getting to know the city a little bit, and, you know, learning about the effects of the after effects, as you will. I mean, this earthquake was 12 years ago, and I know that, you know, it's a little bit sad, but this is what's actually drawn people to see how the city is being rejuvenated. And I was reading somewhere just the other day that there's like 700 projects, you know, still underway. But that, you know, the locals, the residents, feel that actually the city is turning out to be better than it was before the earthquake. So, you know, there's a silver lining to these things. So we of course take a free day as well, and I understand there's, like anywhere, there's a number of different things that you can see and do. A terrific vista here to give you a sense of the landscape from the gondola that I guess you can take to get up high up above Christchurch to get a view over the city.
Yes, this is one of the options you could do. There are, as you say, a number. This is actually the port of Littleton, just over the hill from Christchurch. The ports of Christchurch are famous now, cruise ships come in and out, a lot of our goods go in and out, but they're famous for our link to the Antarctica. So it is the departure, the Antarctic. It is the departure point to the Antarctic for over 100 years. So it's got a lot of history here. Some of the islands in the bay there were used as quarantine islands for the dogs before they went off to the Antarctic.
Yeah, amazing. And once again, a totally different landscape. And this is something about New Zealand. I mean, you know, not a big country, but when you get there, you realize it is a big country and has such diverse landscapes, you know, from the plains and the mountains and these rolling hills. And then where we go to from Christchurch, obviously from here, we go basically right across the island from the East Coast over to the west side of the island. And we come to Franz Josef, I guess. And we're gonna do part of this by train, I guess.
Yes, it's a really interesting way to make that crossing. So we go through the Canterbury Plains. We leave Christchurch on the scenic Transalpine train, which is world famous. And if we have any train fans, I'm sure that's on your list to tick off the bucket list one day. It does take you across the plains and then starts to go up into the Southern Alps, where you cross spectacular rivers, viaducts, go through gorges. It's just amazing. We depart the train at Arthur's Pass Village to take the next part by road, because the train at some point then goes just into tunnels and the journey is more interesting by road. But we get to experience that wonderful train journey.
Yeah, and so this is when the real majestic scenery of New Zealand starts as we get into the Alps. We'll overnight in Franz Josef, and then, as I said at the beginning, we'll make our way down the west side of the Southern Alps, and our destination will be Queenstown, which, as noted in the subtitle here, Adventure Capital of New Zealand. What a breathtaking place. And we've got a few nights here to enjoy a little bit about what this area all has to offer, you know?
Yeah, and you can see in the background of the picture there, that's they are called the Remarkables. So that mountain range is the Remarkables, which I don't really need to give any more explanation about.
Aptly titled.
Yes, and the whole region is remarkable. You literally can do and see so much, and the scenery is just jaw-dropping at every turn. But so yeah, it's something for everybody.
Something for everybody. So we're going to visit, obviously spend some time in Queenstown itself. We'll also have time to wander around the town. It's not a huge town, so it's quite walkable in terms of enjoying itself, sitting on the shores of Lake Wakatipu. And we're going to go to this little gold rush village called Arrowtown while we're there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, not far from Queenstown at all, not a long drive. Arrowtown is beautifully located again under more mountains, and it's got such an amazing history. I know gold villages aren't a new thing to you probably in the regions that you're from, but here this was established around the 1860s, and we had first a Chinese group of people came in and set up, and then quickly followed by a lot of other people for the gold rush. And the village of Arrowtown has really retained a lot of that beauty and historic buildings, and very quaint. The river obviously still runs through it where they used to pan for gold. Yeah, lovely place to walk around.
Yeah, beautiful. And again, the scenery just fantastic. We're going to be there in fall, so we may even see some colors like you see here. So in some ways, it may be even a little bit reminiscent of home, but here we are on the other side of the world. Now, Milford Sound is a must for anybody in the South Island of New Zealand. This is considered part of what they call Fjordland. Is that correct?
Yes, Fjordland, which is part of the UNESCO Southwest New Zealand World Heritage Area. So whilst we call Milford Sound a sound, it is actually a fjord. It's a confusion.
Exactly. So we drive out there, we spend the day, we do a boat cruise on Milford Sound, like admiring these. Yeah, it's a fjord. I mean, much like in Norway, for those of our members who perhaps have been in Norway, but here we are in the southern fjords. And yeah, for me, there's hardly more breathtaking landscape than when you have that combination of sea and very high mountains and cliffs and maybe some waterfalls along the way.
Absolutely. They do say that this is one of the wettest regions of New Zealand. So be prepared that it might be wet no matter what time of year. But to see it on a wet day makes it even more spectacular, because you do have a number of waterfalls as you travel through the sound. And again, they are just that much more powerful once there's been a little bit of rain behind them as well. Very atmospheric in any weather, though.
And the mist that hangs around the mountains. I mean, just I think no matter what the weather, and as you say, just like our West Coast, it can rain, and you know that's part of what makes it what it is. So we'll be back in Queenstown for, as I say, another free day with a bunch of different options here. I think that you know, if you were going to do a flight by helicopter. And you know, I'm a big fan because you just get to see so much. Like you capture the whole region. One of the many things you can do. What are some of the other things that one might enjoy while we're, you know, for that extra day in Queenstown?
Yeah, helicopter flights are extremely popular, and because you can get up to those mountain ranges as well. You can have snow landings if you wish. We have other options. We have jet boats in the region. We have got some amazing four-wheel driving experiences. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, there's a Lord of the Rings four-wheel drive tour that you're able to do. Something that's included is a sailing on an old steamship, and we call it Lady of the Lake. It takes you from Queenstown across Lake Wakatipu to Walters Peak, and that's a beautiful experience that is included. So this isn't an option, and no extra cost, of course, for that. And you get to go on this coal-powered steamer, Lady of the Lake, and when you have a meal when you arrive in Walter Peak, and when you come back on the boat, they do sing-alongs. They have a piano on the boat, so it's great. It's an opportunity.
A lot of fun, a lot of fun. And, when you're here, you'll also, invariably Queenstown is popular amongst, visitors from all over the world. So you'll probably meet some interesting people. And this is exactly the kind of experience that we like, because, you get to connect with others. And that's part of our mission, our philosophy at Wheel and Anchor. So we'll have to wave farewell to Queenstown after a few days there, and the last leg of our trip, we're going to head north again, this time along the eastern side of the Southern Alps, and our destination will be Mount Cook. And now, this is the highest mountain in New Zealand, right?
It is indeed. Get my facts right. Now, I don't know if you're in meters or feet. Which would you prefer?
We're in meters in Canada.
Meters, okay. 3,724.
Wow.
Yeah, it's our biggest mountain, which we're very, very proud of.
Yeah, indeed. And yeah, the scenery, I think it's one of those places where you drive and it's like you want to stop for photos at every corner, because it just gets better and better as you go.
Yeah, and it is surrounded by, as you can see in the pictures, we've got a lot of glacial lakes, and the colors from the water in the lakes is just stunning, beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. So we will, I guess, spend one night in Mount Cook before we make our way back then to the East Coast, back to Christchurch for our last couple of nights. And we've got a different experience here. And I know in the picture, this shows a lot of snow on the mountain, which is probably unlikely in fall, because remember, although it's April, this is fall, or sorry, March, this is fall. What activities are we going to undertake on our last couple of days while we're in Christchurch?
So this is one of the beautiful lakes you would pass as you leave Mount Cook to travel back to Christchurch. It is one of those glacial lakes. You get to see by the side of this lake, we have a lovely old church chapel called the Church of the Good Shepherd. You've probably seen it on many pictures or even movies. It's just stunning location, beautiful setting. And we travel, we have time through the Canterbury Plains, and we get back to Christchurch. We have a visit to a garden and old homestead, and then some more time in Christchurch.
Yeah, and as I say, Christchurch, unfortunately, will be our last stop. We'll visit, though, one more place. This is the French cultural part of New Zealand, Akaroa. Obviously a Maori town, much like, a lot of the towns of Rotorua, everything that sort of ends in OA seems to me is Maori, but the town is French, you were saying.
Yes, it was settled by the French whalers. So as Russell was back in the day, a whaling capital. It's obviously New Zealand in the Pacific here, prime spot for all those whalers in days gone by. And Akaroa was settled by French whalers, so there's a long history of it trying to be claimed by the French, but they didn't get there just in time. But a lot of the settlement is still very French, and they've retained that French feeling to Akaroa.
Yeah, fantastic. It's always neat when you go to a place like New Zealand where you're going to hear English, or Kiwi, as it were, everywhere you go, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a little bit of French here. So a neat touch. And a nice way to round out our journey across New Zealand, and so that'll take us to 3 weeks. And it's a pretty all-encompassing trip. In fact, I want to repeat a note here from one of our members, Barb, who actually hails from New Zealand. And she wrote in our chat box here, "This is truly a great trip, seeing a lot of New Zealand in a short time." So I think that's testament to, the effort that we put in, because I'm like, how do we make, the right amount of time? You could spend months here. And as you'll read in our program itinerary, I remember my folks way back when they went to New Zealand the first time for about this amount of time, for about 3 or 4 weeks. They loved it so much. They went back again the following year, and I think they went back another time. And so I think that, this is the experience that awaits you in New Zealand. And Vicky, I appreciate you really helping me to give some color to all those amazing things that we're going to see and do. I'll just touch on the additional information. Of course, all the details are in our program itinerary, that you can see this trip here, the pricing in Canadian dollars. And again, details in the program itinerary. As usual, we pretty much include most of what you will need while you are on the ground in New Zealand. It does include the domestic flight between the North and South Islands. You've got breakfast every day. You've got some lovely accommodation that Vicky and my team have sourced out. So, you know, we're really comfortable. You guys have been doing tours across New Zealand for a long time. So you know the ropes, as it were. And of course, we'll have a host along on this trip as well throughout the entire journey that will be there to make sure that we have a lot of wheel and anchor fun and great vibes and all the rest of it. So the only thing, of course, as usual with our trips, you have to look after is airfare, which we will be happy to facilitate for you, and insurance. And you know, these days we were just checking recently before we released the program about what we're looking at about airfare prices. They are going up. I am sad to say, but that's we sort of expected that in the post-pandemic era. But this is pretty much what you're looking at. I think actually those numbers are backwards. I think it's a little bit less from Vancouver than it is from Toronto. So I'm just looking at the number now, but you just to give you a sense of what you're talking about, obviously we can give you a firm quote for airfare. However, we have arranged with Vicky and her team, and they've been kind enough to offer us our early booking bonus. So if you sign up early, again, this trip has shown to be quite popular. I mean, we've had people asking for it for months since we wanted to do it already this year, but you know, just all the hecticness after COVID. So if you do sign up before the 15th of August, we've got our early booking bonus there available, $500 off. And yeah, now we'll take a few questions and see if anybody has anything else that we haven't covered here. Of course, you can always contact either Paula or Barb to get any questions answered that you haven't read here already. So, are there any questions? I know one question that has come in by email. We didn't really touch on it too much. We mentioned autumn. What is the weather like in this time of the year?
Okay, so a very famous saying we have in New Zealand is you may get 4 seasons in one day. So that's my disclaimer. Of course, you know, it will be fairly settled, but just to be aware that that can be the case, depending whereabouts in New Zealand you are as we travel through. But in the North Island, a little warmer, of course, a little closer to the equator.
Yeah.
It might be around this time of year between 18 to 20 during the day. In the South Island, you might get to about 15. And as you go further south, the temperature will drop a little. You may get some rain, again, probably equal opportunities across both islands. But generally, autumn is pretty settled. We've had the worst of our weather is generally spring, winter and spring. So it should be hopefully settled for you in our autumn or fall season.
Yeah, we like autumn, and it's, you know, it's obviously it's the end of winter in Canada, so it's going to be certainly a lot better weather than at home. One of our members, Wilma, asked how many people on the trip, and Peter asked the question as well. So obviously it depends how many sign up, but this is in keeping with the other trips like this, our experiential series of trips, probably between sort of 12 to 16 people is what we were anticipating, but I don't think we're going to go much beyond that. In fact, I think, Vicky, I think we're only holding space for about 16, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think it's around the 16, 18 number. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it certainly wouldn't, that would be the maximum, and the optimum is, probably 12 to 16. So it's the right size of group for doing a trip like this, because we can use smaller vehicles, and you have a more intimate experience. So that's what we're anticipating. Good. Unless I don't see any other questions here. If anybody else has any last minute questions, of course, you can always drop your questions, and I'm sure others will pop up as you, and if you're watching the replay of this webinar that's going to be sent out to everybody who signed up within 24 hours, then of course, drop a note to Paula or Barb. They'll be more than happy to answer your questions. They know New Zealand actually better than I do, because both of them worked for a company that specialized in Australia and New Zealand. So you're in good hands as far as getting all your questions. And I see that Barb made a comment here saying layer. We say that on all of our trips. Layering is the key to life on the road. So that's the best way to manage. I want to thank you again, Vicky, for your amazing insights into this trip. And I appreciate appreciate all the effort that's gone in. Thank you to our members for coming out and taking 40 minutes of your time to experience what this trip is all about. I hope you'll join us. It's a great, great trip to New Zealand. And as I say, you can combine it with Australia. We just did the webinar on that, so you can find the replay as well as on Bali. But if you have any questions, just drop us a note. We're delighted to have you, and have yourselves a great night, because it's night there, it's bedtime, and we're just getting our day started. At least I'm getting my day started here in Thailand. Good. So take care, bye-bye, and we'll see you at our next webinar.